name is Clifford Marlong. I'm from Jamaica, and I have been in the UNFCCC process for over 20 years as Jamaica's lead climate change negotiator. Currently, I serve in the Adaptation Committee. Before we move into the interesting bit of the webinar, let me welcome all of you who are participating with us this morning for this very important event, the launch of 5 of the National Adaptation Plans. I want to first dispense with some housekeeping rules that will take us through the next 90 minutes. They were very relevant. So the Secretariat will now give us a very brief presentation on what the housekeeping rules are. Secretariat, you have the floor, sir.
Do we have this slide, Julie? Okay. Thank you very much, Clifford, for introducing us into. I'll provide a few housekeeping announcements that will make everybody to effectively participate in the event. First of all, we have 2 languages today, Spanish and English. If you go to the bottom of your screen on the right, you will see an icon either with the language on it, English or Spanish, or with the icon of the world. Please click on that, and then you can select whether you want to listen in Spanish or in English. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I'm sure we're getting used to it. Please keep your microphone mute at all times, unless when you are making an intervention. We also advise everyone to switch off their cameras but when you speak, of course, it is a very good thing. Please do switch on your camera when you are making an intervention. Of course, it's not a requirement, but it's good to switch on your camera so we can see when you speak. To request for the floor, please use the chat function. Just write your name in the box, and the moderator will note that you need to make the floor to make an intervention. Just write your name in the box. There is a possibility, or you have the possibility, to provide comments, to ask questions in the chat box at any time and during the time of the presentations. And the last one is that we will make all the presentations available on the event webpage immediately after this event, or even sometimes during this event, we will make them available. This event is also being recorded, and the recording of the event will be available even after the event. And the event is also broadcast live on YouTube. Thank you very much, moderator, and back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Secretariat for these important announcements. Remember to keep your microphone muted unless you request the floor and you're given the floor. All right, so let me now move into the next section. The NAP country platform provides a space for developing countries that have submitted their national adaptation plans to the UNFCCC to present their NAPs. It allows countries to highlight their adaptation priorities and how they intend to implement these priority actions.
Sorry, can we just verify that the interpretation is working to Spanish?
Okay, can you do that, please?
Yes, sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay, that's fine. We want to make sure everyone is there, is listening. It's okay? All right, thanks. Thanks very much, Paul. As I was saying, it allows the countries to highlight their adaptation priorities and how they intend to implement their priority actions. The platform also offers countries the opportunity to share the main lessons learned throughout the formulation stage, how they may promote collaboration with other countries, and how they would monitor progress and effectiveness of their adaptation efforts. The event is organized under the umbrella of the, sorry, someone, Matsami, you were saying something? No? May I continue? I was saying that the event is organized under the umbrella of the NAP Expos. And given that there are no physical events happening this year, and we all know the reason why, it was decided to hold this event virtually. And so here we are today having this event. For this particular event, 5 of 6 countries that submitted their NAPs since the last NAP country dialogue in April of 2019 will present their NAPs today. So we will have 5 presentations. And the countries are Grenada, Guatemala, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Suriname. Okay? Grenada, Guatemala, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Suriname. We are especially delighted to have with us this morning the chair of the subsidiary body for implementation, Ms. Marianne Carlson, and she will provide the opening remarks for this event. So I'm sure she will provide us with some inspiring words so that we can enhance our ambitions in the formulation and implementation of our national adaptation plans. Ms. Carlson, you have the floor, ma'am. Mariana, are you there? That's
Moderator, yeah, just a moment. I think my team was trying to call it. We had technical difficulty, the connection, but just 1 second.
Okay.
The chair with the phone, so yeah,
Chair, you have the
chair's
floor
on board now, Clifford.
Okay, Ms. Carlson, you can go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Thank you so much. And please apologize for me arriving late. Sometimes connectivity doesn't work very well in Norway either. So at times there are troubles. But let me begin by saying, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It is afternoon here in Norway, but I know for many of you, it will be early morning. It's an honor to be addressing you today at the virtual NAP country platform. I am addressing you from my living room in Norway under these very exceptional and challenging times. And I hope each and every one of you and your families are well and healthy. The NAP country platform provides a space for developing countries to present their NAP, to highlight adaptation priorities and showcase how they will design implementation. This is also an opportunity to share good practices and lessons learned and to promote collaboration with other countries. The NAP process was established in 2010 as a tool to strengthen medium and long-term adaptation planning in developing countries. At the onset, a particular focus was given to the LDCs. Today, the NAPs provide a unique avenue to communicate adaptation needs and priorities based on a robust mapping of effects, impacts, and risks associated with climate change. For countries, the NAP process is also an opportunity to align adaptation with overall sustainable development planning. As of today, 20 countries have submitted their NAPs to the UNCCC under the NAP Central, and more especially the 5 countries presenting here today. And more are underway. I would like to congratulate all countries that have or are in the process of establishing their NAP. Developing a NAP is not a small undertaking. It requires considerable mapping and data collection and analytical capacity. It also requires coordination and engagement across sectors, stakeholders, and at all levels. Besides the output in the shape of a NAP document that you will be presenting here today, I am confident that the process of developing a NAP has led to increased awareness and capacities that benefits adaptation in your countries way beyond the plan itself. However, no one can do this alone. The least developed country expert group, the Adaptation Committee, and other constituted bodies under the Climate Convention, together with a wide range of organizations across the world, stand ready to continue supporting developing countries for the formulation and implementation of NAPs. However, more is needed. We have set out a goal in the Paris Agreement on enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, and reducing vulnerabilities to climate change. The world has also recognized the need to scale up support for adaptation efforts in developing countries. I would like to use this opportunity to remind us and highlight the importance of continued efforts to scale up adaptation support to developing countries, and especially to the LDCs and SIDS. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that no one is left behind. I hope that this virtual NAP country platform will give you an arena to strengthen communication of adaptation needs and priorities. And at the same time, I hope that this provides a platform for further collaboration and support. To this end, I hope that events like this will enable and strengthen adaptation efforts in developing countries, as well as the scaling up of support for those efforts. I wish you a successful event, and once again, thank you for the invitation to address this important event. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much from the chair of the subsidiary body for implementation, Mrs. Carlson. And thanks for the sterling efforts that she is putting into the post of the chairmanship. We acknowledge that we need to have scaled up financing, and I'm glad to hear that efforts are being made and countries are actually coming forward to assist with the implementation of NAPs. We have here in the Caribbean, in the North Atlantic, 27 hurricanes so far. And the season still has another month, the official season, because we have seen it extended beyond November at times. So we know that countries are in need. And the impacts are global, not only within this region, but we know what happens and we hear what happens in the other regions. And so adaptation is now of critical importance for all of us. So thank you very much, Chair of the SPI, for being part of our deliberations here this morning and bringing us inspirational words and very warm greetings. We will now move to the presentation of the countries, their NAP presentation. The 6 countries submitted, 5 are here with us this morning. The process to formulate and implement NAPs is meant to help countries identify their medium and long-term adaptation needs, and to develop and implement projects and programs to address those needs. The NAP is to be produced periodically and is the main output for the longer-term process. It's a statement of what is known and prioritized for a given time slice to inform implementation, reporting, monitoring, and evaluation, as well as other uses, including accessing financial support, of course. Before we begin, I'm asking participants to please write down any comments or questions that you may have for the countries until, as they present, and to indicate clearly when you get that opportunity to ask those questions or to make those comments, which country or speaker you're addressing the question to. And that will happen when we get to the Q&A session after the presentations. Let me now move into the presentations. We have, each country will have we'll have 7 minutes to present. And if you're going beyond the time, myself or the secretary will let you know that you need to wrap up as soon as possible. So we have 5 countries, I repeat again, presenting today. And I think I want to thank each of them for making themselves available to share useful insights from their NAP process. The presentations themselves will focus on key priority activities in the NAP that will be implemented through the GCF, the Green Climate Fund country programming. They'll also focus on plans to implement priority activities, and this is a country-driven process. So these activities have been developed through national consultation with relevant stakeholders. And then they'll tell us some of the strategies to measure progress and effectiveness of their efforts. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what you will be hearing in the next 40-45 minutes or so. So we begin with the first presentation, which is from Guatemala. And we have with us this morning Ms. Jennifer Zamora. We're very happy to have her with us. She's the head of the Department of Adaptation and Vulnerability of the Directorate of Climate Change of the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources in Guatemala. She's an industrial engineer and has over 12 years of experience in developing environmental strategies focused on the prevention and reduction of environmental impacts. Ms. Zamora, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for my presentation. I will to present the process for prioritization actions in our National Adaptation Plan. Sorry, my presentation will be in Spanish. I hope you understand me. Okay.
That's
bueno,
fine, Ms. Zamora. We have interpretation, so don't worry. Go ahead.
Gracias. Bueno, para iniciar, nosotros tenemos nuestro Plan de Acción Nacional de Cambio Climático, el cual pues se basó en las políticas nacionales. Hay un dato muy importante para considerar respecto a Guatemala, y es que Guatemala está catalogado como uno de los países más vulnerables del planeta, dadas las condiciones sociales, económicas y ambientales con las que nosotros pues convivimos y tenemos precisamente en nuestro país. Y nace la necesidad también, precisamente para este año, de la actualización de nuestra NDC de país, así como también definir acciones más concretas y medibles que puedan ser evaluadas y reportadas también de nuestro NAP. Por ello, también tenemos un contexto legal en el cual contamos con una política nacional de cambio climático. Tenemos pues la ley marco de cambio climático, y de ella se deriva pues la creación del Plan de Acción Nacional de Cambio Climático. El mismo en su capítulo 8 se destina específicamente a acciones de adaptación, que sería nuestro NAP. Nuestro NAP cuenta con 6 sectores que fueron identificados en su momento, en el 2018, que fue presentado, y aproximadamente fueron generadas unas 25 acciones por sector de adaptación. Bueno, definitivamente son diferentes acciones, varias las que nosotros tenemos y para nosotros era importante también identificar cuáles eran las acciones prioritarias también para monitorear, para darle seguimiento y es por ello de que el año pasado, en el 2019, se vio la necesidad también de priorizar estas acciones, de definir cuáles eran los sectores prioritarios para nosotros, no sin subestimar los otros sectores pues que ya habían sido previamente analizados y también darles la importancia respectiva, pero se creó pues este análisis con el objetivo de fortalecer la capacidad del gobierno de Guatemala para la planificación e implementación, sobre todo pues para generar la actualización de la contribución nacionalmente determinada, pero también con el objetivo de priorizar nuestras acciones en temas de adaptación. Por acá tengo este slide donde les muestro también a ustedes el proceso, que lo podemos resumir en 5 etapas, la metodología que utilizamos para la priorización. Primero, todo esto fue en base a la convocatoria, con reuniones, ya ahorita estoy presentando la pantalla completa, con reuniones participativas con representantes especialistas de diferentes sectores. Se convocaron a los especialistas de los sectores prioritarios y se comenzó a analizar y se dejaron de los 6 sectores, 4 sectores que se analizaron eran los prioritarios para nuestro país. Agricultura, ganadería y seguridad alimentaria, las zonas marino-costeras, bosques, ecosistemas y áreas protegidas y gestión de riesgo y vulnerabilidad. De ellos se generó también un portafolio según nuestras políticas, nuestra ley y sobre todo nuestro Plan Nacional de Adaptación para generar pues toda esta cantidad de medidas de adaptación con las cuales nosotros contamos, pero las mismas son bastantes, o sea, es una gran cantidad. Por ello se decidió pues hacer un análisis y una priorización de las medidas. Primero se analizaron criterios que se iban a tomar en cuenta para realizar la priorización. Entre ellos tenemos si la medida entra entre las prioridades nacionales, si tiene un indicador de seguimiento, el plazo de implementación o la posibilidad de financiamiento. Se utilizó la metodología del IPCC, del análisis multicriterio, y generamos también una lista corta de medidas, las cuales fueron evaluadas y ponderadas mediante una matriz donde se ponía una ponderación a cada una de las medidas de acuerdo a los criterios establecidos en el paso 3. Para ello siempre fueron convocados los especialistas, los líderes de los sectores y bueno, incluso también las instituciones que son las rectoras en Guatemala de los temas que estábamos analizando. Y con ello, pues se generó ya una lista corta también de 4 medidas o acciones de adaptación por cada uno de los 4 sectores que fueron priorizados en el primer paso. Por acá ustedes pueden ver algunas fotografías también de lo importante que para nosotros era consensuar este proceso, tomar los diferentes criterios de los especialistas en cada uno de los sectores. Y bueno, finalmente este fue el resultado de la priorización, donde si ustedes pueden ver en la gráfica, presentan 4 acciones prioritarias por cada uno de los sectores. Por cuestiones de tiempo no voy a leer cada una de ellas, pero afortunadamente pues contamos con este consenso y de hecho también de manera paralela se ha trabajado un sistema un sistema MER de medición, evaluación y reporte para el sector agricultura, ganadería y seguridad alimentaria y también para el sector de las zonas marino-costeras, el cual nos permite por medio de indicadores monitorear el seguimiento también, que ya lo estamos haciendo recientemente finalizamos en junio de este año, que nos permite pues ya ir definiendo también nuestros avances en este sentido. Y finalmente, pues se creó una hoja de ruta para cada una de las medidas de implementación para darle el seguimiento correspondiente. Mi presentación es general por el tiempo en el que estamos. Cualquier duda, pues en su espacio, con mucho gusto, estoy en la disponibilidad de responderles. Gracias por su atención.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zamora, for being very efficient. I think you finished well within the time that was allotted. But I'm not a native, not a speaker of Spanish, mind you, but I could identify with a lot of the things you were saying, in particular your prioritization of the agricultural sector, which is quite known to us here, that our food security is of critical importance, and this is what will happen in countries like ours, that the impacts on the agricultural sector can be quite telling. You can lose a lot. We just finished a few days ago the heavy rainfall caused by Hurricane Zeta. So Christmas is not looking too bright yet for some of the farmers. So we know exactly what is it that you're presenting to us. And let me thank you very much for your presentation. We'll move now to our second speaker, who is from Paraguay, and she's Ms. Nora Paez. Ms. Paez is the head of the Department of Adaptation of the Ministry of the Environment and Sustainable Development, Paraguay. She has represented Paraguay in several international events for the UNFCCC related activities, and has contributed to the development of climate change policy instruments across different governance scales. So she's very much an expert with respect to adaptation. I now hand the floor over to Ms. Paez. Ms. Paez, you have the floor.
Muy buenas tardes a todos y todas. Muchas gracias por esta invitación. Para nosotros es muy importante poder presentar a todo el mundo las iniciativas que estamos llevando adelante desde Paraguay. Es importante que todos ustedes sepan que contamos con una Ley Nacional de Cambio Climático donde expresa que la adaptación ante el cambio climático es una prioridad nacional. Y en esa línea, en el año 2016, el Paraguay, en el marco de la tercera comunicación nacional, pudo desarrollar el Plan Nacional de Adaptación, que ustedes pueden observar aquí. ¿Cuáles son los sectores prioritarios? Prácticamente en la mayoría de la región siempre nuestra prioridad es lo relacionado a la producción agropecuaria y la seguridad alimentaria, recursos hídricos, también las infraestructuras que se ven fuertemente afectados, la salud que cada vez también hay evidencia científica que hay una relación directa con el cambio climático, por ejemplo, esta pandemia que estamos viviendo. Y de estos 7, tanto el sector de educación y difusión y los aspectos normativos y legales son transversales. Hay que mencionar que hay habitantes aquí en mi país que a lo mejor todavía no dimensionan el concepto de cambio climático. Entonces, por eso para nosotros ese fortalecimiento de capacidades a todos los niveles es muy importante y es uno de los grandes retos también para nosotros. Ahí está cambiando, un momentito por favor. No, cambié la presentación. Uy.
Next slide, please.
Sí, no cambia la presentación. Uy, a ver, creo que se trancó. Aquí podemos continuar, disculpen estos minutitos. Bueno, básicamente, y es algo muy importante que nosotros hicimos, fue de desarrollar esta estructura operativa, nosotros le llamamos. ¿Qué significa eso? Fue determinar cómo se van a aterrizar, o sea, cómo se va a implementar y aterrizar este Plan Nacional de Adaptación. Porque muchas veces se comete el error de pensar que el cambio climático solamente debe ser atendido por el Ministerio del Ambiente. Y sabemos nosotros que esto se debe atender a todos los niveles y en todos los sectores. Entonces, en esa línea desarrollamos esta estructura operativa que básicamente es a través de dos maneras. Al nivel central, a través de los sectores identificados en la lámina anterior, y a través del nivel local. Sabemos que la adaptación va de abajo para arriba, entonces necesitamos que tanto los municipios y las gobernaciones desarrollen y se empoderen en todo lo que respecta a la acción climática. Y eso también se vuelve un gran desafío para nosotros en atención de que la mayoría de las veces para desarrollar tantos proyectos o para ejecutar mismo estos planes de acción climática se necesita ese tan anhelado financiamiento, ¿verdad? Que siempre los que trabajamos en adaptación decimos que ojalá que lleguemos a ese 50 y 50% en adaptación y mitigación. En esa línea, de los siguientes puntos a atender era lo relacionado a cómo este NAP se está implementando, ¿verdad? Y a la fecha, y siguiendo esa estructura que yo le mencionaba con anterioridad, Paraguay cuenta con un plan sectorial de gestión y reducción de riesgos de desastres en el sector de agricultura, que también se desarrolló como a la par con el NAP. Sin embargo, tiene todavía sus desafíos al momento de la implementación. Y también a la fecha, a través, porque era una de las preguntas, ¿verdad? Cómo el Fondo Verde para el Clima está colaborando al país. Entonces, el próximo año, en el marco de la ventana NAP, queremos desarrollar 2 planes sectoriales más, que es para el sector de agricultura, para el sector de recursos hídricos y para el sector de infraestructura, transporte y energía. Entonces, esos son nuestros planes más inmediatos, así como en el caso de Guatemala, ahora también nos encontramos en el proceso de la actualización de las NDC. Sabemos que el NAT es un complemento muy importante y que nos da muchos insumos para poder unir todo este gran rompecabezas, ¿verdad? Y lo que respecta a los gobiernos locales, a la fecha también, Paraguay cuenta con el desarrollo de 16 planes locales, que también fueron alcanzados estos 12 de la región oriental con unos recursos del Fondo Verde para el Clima. Y en la región occidental se hizo en el marco de un proyecto que se llamaba ProADAP. Y justamente quisiera hacer un comentario en ese sentido, de que el gran reto es que los gobiernos, tanto sectoriales y locales, destinen recursos de sus propias cajas, vamos a decir, porque muchas veces se espera la cooperación y esta cooperación tiene también sus limitaciones. Y finalmente, ¿verdad? En lo que respecta a los esfuerzos de adaptación y lo que respecta al monitoreo y la evaluación, a la fecha, Paraguay, justamente en este proceso de actualización de las NDC, busca poder tener un sistema de monitoreo y evaluación con indicadores de seguimiento. Y para eso necesitamos unas metas medibles y alcanzables y más específicas. Y en ese trabajo estamos. Y muchísimas gracias. En atención al tiempo también, básicamente es un resumen rápido de lo que estamos realizando desde el Paraguay. Así que síganos en las redes sociales y muchas gracias a todos y todas.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paez, for a very insightful presentation. I missed part of it because my connection went, so I had to reconnect. So we want to thank you very much for the excellent work that you're doing in developing your NAPs in Paraguay. We'll now move to the next presentation, the third one from Uruguay. And we have with us Ms. Myrna Campoleone. Ms. Campoleone is an architect at the University of Montevideo, Uruguay. She currently works as principal consultant of the National Adaptation Plan in cities and infrastructure in Uruguay. Ms. Campoleone, you have the floor. The floor is yours.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Voy a compartir la presentación. Bueno, un gusto, muchas gracias por la invitación, antes que nada, a los organizadores. Yo voy a intentar cumplir con el tiempo. Voy a presentar, en la estrategia de país de Uruguay ha sido desarrollar planes nacionales de adaptación sectoriales. Así, de esta forma, el año pasado se formuló y se terminó de formular y se presentó una para el sector agrícola, y en este momento estamos en la fase ya de terminar la formulación y el diseño y la difusión del proceso de una app para las costas y una app para ciudades e infraestructuras. Empiezo un poco a contarles algunas cuestiones de ciudades, cuya coordinadora soy yo, digamos. Después le voy a dar al final la palabra a mi colega Cecilia Jones, que es la coordinadora del NAP del agro. Pero bueno, en el caso entonces del NAP Ciudades e Infraestructuras, es un proyecto que está financiado por el Fondo Verde para el Clima, y que es de implementación directa del PNUD, del Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo, implementado en conjunto con los ministerios de Uruguay de Ambiente y de Vivienda y Ordenamiento Territorial. Y bueno, ¿y por qué se ha resuelto en Uruguay hacer un NAP para las ciudades? En Uruguay más del 93% de la población vive en las zonas urbanas, y sin duda que en las ciudades se llevan a cabo las principales actividades para el desarrollo del país. Hay importantes infraestructuras, activos económicos, y bueno, los impactos del cambio climático en una ciudad, justamente por la envergadura que tienen, repercuten en todo el país. Si tenemos que hablar de cuáles son las principales vulnerabilidades y sectores expuestos en las ciudades, sin duda que la principal amenaza que tenemos está vinculada a las inundaciones urbanas, las inundaciones por eventos hidrometeorológicos, en población extremadamente vulnerable desde el punto de vista socioeconómico, digamos, que vive en condiciones de habitabilidad muy precarias, que se concentran muchas veces en zonas inseguras, en los bordes de cañadas, de ríos, bueno, y arroyos urbanos, y bueno, y configuran, de alguna manera, esta foto muestra un poco cuál es esa situación, y ese es el fenómeno más importante, digamos, que tenemos que enfrentar en nuestras ciudades. Además de las olas de calor y de frío, bueno, ráfagas de viento, también temas costeros, donde también se concentra la mayor cantidad de población, que ahora lo vamos a desarrollar un poco más, sequías, deslizamientos en algunas ciudades, pero sin duda el fenómeno más importante y que genera un impacto mayor es que yo les comentaba anteriormente. Bueno, en el caso entonces de NAP Ciudades hemos definido un objetivo principal, que es reducir la vulnerabilidad de las comunidades frente a los efectos del cambio y la variabilidad climática, mediante la creación de capacidades de adaptación y resiliencia en ciudades, infraestructuras y entornos urbanos, integrando medidas de adaptación en las políticas, programas y actividades correspondientes, tanto nuevas como existentes, y en procesos y estrategias de planificación nacionales y locales, con el fin de mejorar la calidad de vida de la población. Hemos definido 5 líneas estratégicas. Una de ellas es el ordenamiento territorial y la planificación en las ciudades, los cambios en el hábitat urbano, la gestión integral de riesgos de desastres climáticos, el fortalecimiento de las capacidades, sensibilización y comunicación, y la promoción de formas de producción y consumo sostenible. Estas líneas estratégicas están de alguna manera desarrolladas en 50 medidas que forman parte de un plan de acción al 2025, y que todas ellas están alineadas, digamos, con la NDC de adaptación del Uruguay. En cuanto al monitoreo y evaluación, se han definido 5 dimensiones, y dentro de ellas 34 indicadores que tienen que ver un poco con estas 5, bueno, que están mostradas acá. Una tiene que ver con espacios públicos y suelo verde, otra que es infraestructura y edificaciones, sistema social, gobernanza y capacidad de respuesta, educación, conocimiento e información. Bueno, luego, como yo les comentaba también, en este año estamos previendo la finalización y la presentación de un NAP para las zonas costeras. En este caso, para el Uruguay es muy importante, sobre todo por lo que significa para el turismo, digamos, vinculado al sol y playa. Uruguay tiene 670 kilómetros de zonas costeras, 6 gobiernos locales, departamentales, en ellas se concentra 70% de la población, 72% de las viviendas, y bueno, y significa un 59% de los ingresos del turismo. En esto, las principales amenazas, digamos, detectadas tienen que ver con el incremento del nivel medio del mar, y bueno, y esto provoca mayores inundaciones, erosión costera, y bueno, digamos, la vulnerabilidad tiene que ver con población de riesgo que está ubicada en estos sistemas, también el ecosistema, digamos, costero que está vulnerado, y bueno, y hay un riesgo de activos. En este sentido, se hizo un trabajo de investigación muy importante, parte por la Universidad de la República, Facultad de Ingeniería del Uruguay, y parte por un trabajo con la Universidad de Cantabria de España, donde se hizo un estudio de las vulnerabilidades de 6 zonas, una por departamento, digamos, en las zonas costeras del Uruguay. Es importante también destacar que en este caso estamos trabajando para formular un proyecto de implementación que será presentado en la brevedad al Fondo Verde para el Clima. Bueno, y en el caso de costas tenemos un total de 60 medidas, de alguna manera organizadas un poco como se muestra en esta presentación. Esto después, obviamente, no vale la pena que yo haga un desarrollo en el corto tiempo que tengo de esto lo pueden ver en la página web del Ministerio, o les va a quedar esta presentación. Cecilia, si tú querés intervenir para la parte de agro.
Bueno, pasar a la próxima diapositiva. Como se mencionó más temprano, Uruguay presentó su Plan Nacional de Adaptación para el sector agropecuario en la COP25 el año pasado. Y dado que ya no tenemos más tiempo, rápidamente decirles que tenemos una estrategia 2050 con 4 dimensiones, que son los sistemas de producción, ecosistemas y recursos naturales, medios de vida y capacidades institucionales, con el objetivo de mejorar los medios de vida de las poblaciones rurales, a través del sistema de producción animal y vegetal sostenibles y menos vulnerable a los impactos de la variabilidad y del cambio climático. Alguien me dice que estoy en mute, pero sin embargo mi micrófono dice que estoy hablando. No sé si me pueden escuchar.
Yo te escucho perfecto, Cecilia.
O sea, alguien tiene algún problema con el audio. Entonces, la estrategia 2050 viene acompañada de un plan de acción al 2025 que tiene 66 medidas de adaptación que cubren todos los sectores del quehacer agropecuario, en esas 4 dimensiones que les mencioné. 52 de esas medidas surgieron del mecanismo que desarrollamos para hacer la consulta pública a nivel nacional, que le llamamos diálogos de adaptación. Hicimos 7 diálogos sectoriales y 2 diálogos transversales, uno para agricultura familiar y otro para mujeres rurales, de donde se recogieron entonces 52 de esas 66 medidas. Las otras surgieron principalmente de la institucionalidad pública agropecuaria. Las 66 medidas contribuyen a los objetivos de la Política Nacional de Cambio Climático de nuestro país y al cumplimiento de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, y 36 de ellas contribuyen al logro de las metas nacionales al Acuerdo de París. Este NAP también tiene un esquema para monitoreo y evaluación con 32 indicadores que están construidos en base, alineados con la estrategia 2050 a nivel de resultados esperados. El plan está disponible en la central de NAPS y ahí lo pueden consultar, si no queda a disposición para cualquier pregunta.
Genial, gracias. Bueno, por acá estamos con Uruguay. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very, very good work you're doing there in Uruguay. We really want to commend you so much. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. I see you also have a NAP for the energy sector, which is very interesting. I saw that. I think my interpretation is correct. There's an NAP there for the energy sector. All right. So thank you so much again. We have 2 more presentations to go. The next one is from Suriname, one of the countries of the Caribbean community. And we have Ms. Ivete Patterson, and she's the coordinator of Environment and Climate Change at the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment in Suriname. She's an environmental lawyer, legal expert, and has contributed to the preparation of several climate change reports from Suriname. So I now give the floor to you, Ms. Patterson.
Thank you, Khalifa. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me see. Is my presentation already inside? Do everybody see that?
Oh, we're not seeing your presentation as it. Please put Mrs. Patterson's presentation on screen, please. No. Seems to be having some little bit of problem.
Hi, Yvette. Are you planning to share it from your screen?
Yes, I'm doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, Suriname's National Adaptation Plan will be presented today, and the process that was and the process how it took place will also be presented. The content of my presentation are the objectives of the NAP, the specific goals for Suriname, the process of the NAP, the NAP methodology, the NAP sectors, and where we are now. The roadmap to action, and then where we are now. Okay. The objectives of the NAP are that it enables Suriname to conduct comprehensive medium and long-term climate adaptation planning, but it also builds on the country's existing adaptation activities and other climate documents. It also mainstreams climate change into national decision-making. The specific goals for Suriname are twofold, which means on the one hand, it addresses the impact reduction through adaptation of resiliency building, and it also integrates and mainstream the adaptation plan, the action of the adaptation plan into relevant new and existing policies, program, and other planning processes. The process of the National Adaptation Plan. The adaptation plan was part of the GCCP project in which Suriname participated in the period of 2015 until 2019. And as I already mentioned, it builds on national documents, like especially the National Climate Change Policy, Strategy, and Action Plan, which is over the period of 2014 until 2021. And it also builds on the institutional arrangement which the country has with regard to climate change. The methodology that was used is based on the specific needs and situation of the country, but also in line with the basic UNFCCC guidelines. Part of the process is, of course, the stakeholder engagement process, which also took place. And the NAP methodology has strengthened the strategic adaptation priorities to strengthen effort over all sectors, but for now, but also in the future. It also addresses the economic sectors which are prioritized based on the climate risk and vulnerability. So we have them in 3 groups, like the productive sector. Then we're talking about the 6 sectors that were identified: forestry, water resources, agriculture, energy, and others. The cross-sectoral sectors, there we focus on the sectors that are more integrating and that are spatial planning environment, and the cross-foundational sectors that are health, amongst other health. Of course, not to forget the guiding policy principles that is also merged into this methodology, and which make it a three-pillar methodology that was used for the NAP. You can see the 3 pillars which were used for the NAP within the methodology. And we have the strategic components. There you have the issues like institutions, capacity, and capability, integration, data and information. With regard to data and information, I can inform you that while conducting this process to come about Suriname's National Adaptation Plan, an environmental information network was also set up, and it's also used as part of the process within this within the National Adaptation Plan. So you can see with regard to data and information, there was also a little bit of strengthening. With regard to the policy principles, we have participate, inform, report. And with regard to the legislating part, during the time when the NAP was formulated, Suriname did not have had an environmental framework law. So now in 2020, we have that in place. So that is also something that contributed to that process to got to the approval of the environmental framework law.
You have 2 minutes, please. 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Thank you, Clifford. The roadmap is spread out like this. We have a short term, a mid-term, but also a long-term process. So where are we now? We are now at the stage that we have our second NDC enhanced, and that is for the period 2020 till 2030. We are also now participating in the Engender project, which is to make the NAP that was already formulated gender responsive and focus priority sector in this regard is the water resources. We are also now in the process to do our NC3 project, and in that regard, we are updating our vulnerability assessment that was already identified during the NAP process. So we are updating that vulnerability assessment now with stakeholders in order to see if the information that was provided back then and the priority listing is still the same. And we are also now in the stage that we have a new government and in which a new ministry was established, which is the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment, which means that there will be a lot of focus on spatial planning in relation to environment, but also of both areas, spatial planning and environment, that were identified as cross-cutting sectors related to the other sectors. And we also have our environmental framework law, as already mentioned. Having said that, this put us in a position that we are now in the stage that we can implement our NAP according to what was identified in the document. But also we are in the position now to also help formulate the new development plan that needs to be formulated for the period 2022 until 2026. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patterson. Very important work happening in Suriname, and a number of activities that are climate change related, specifically adaptation related, is in the pipeline and in the works for Suriname, and we're very happy to see that. Thank you very much. We now move to Grenada, my sister island country, and we have Mrs. Kenrecia Upson. Ms. Upson works in the Environmental Division of the Government of Grenada. She currently supports mainstreaming of climate change, mainly adaptation efforts and resource mobilization. Very important here. So I hand the floor to you, Ms. Hobson, with your presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm just testing to make sure that I can be heard.
Very low, we're not hearing you. Get it. Try again.
Turning up the volume, trying again.
Great. Go ahead, Ms. Hobson.
Okay, perfect. And then just confirming that my screen is being shared. Can I just get a confirmation that my screen is being seen?
Yes, it is. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. Let me first start by extending greetings from Grenada and thanking the organizers for extending this opportunity to the country to participate in today's activity. I will try my very best to stick within the time and give a quick but comprehensive overview of Grenada's NAP and our efforts that we've done to date. So I should start by saying that when we started preparing the NAP for Grenada, we actually drew on a lot of information that we already had. I think we all know that we were trying to address risk and vulnerability, and we had such data available to us at the time when we started to prepare our NAP, and benefited from the process of having many other policy activities happening that assisted with us in being able to ensure that we were aligning in line with what the country really needed. So our NAP was elaborated for a 5-year period. We're actually coming up to the time when we need to start looking at revising the document. And it really took a medium to long-term vision of how we would reduce vulnerability in the country, addressing the effects of climate change, and really trying to ensure that we were doing a cross-sectoral approach and ensuring that the various sectors were working together and implementing activities collaboratively, because we all know that climate change is not myopic. It addresses or affects many areas at the same time. It was a very robust process that we went through in the development of our NAP, extensive consultations with on a sectoral level as well as on a national level with stakeholders spanning the gamut from government all the way to private sector and civil society. And what we ended up with was a document that elaborated 12 areas that we needed to work on in our NAP. And it really sort of drew on activities that were already happening on the sectoral and local level. And through the larger consultative process, pulled it all together into this 12 program area of action. And the priority areas span the gamut from enhancing the institutional framework in Grenada for adaptation and climate change efforts in general, building coastal and ecosystem resilience, improving water resource management and food security, and building in particular community resilience to be able to address climate change and adapt to the impacts. Like I said, we were able to really ensure that the NAP was aligned well with other policy level activities that were happening. And we had an opportunity to ensure that when we were developing our GCF country program, that we were able to draw on the activities elaborated in the NAP. So for example, in Grenada, we know everybody talks about the NDC. Our NDC doesn't really elaborate activities related to adaptation. That is almost exclusively done through the NAP, and we have our mitigation efforts in our NDC. And then the two documents are closely aligned to ensure that the benefits that we get from one document or from one area is feeding into the next. And we also have a climate change policy, for instance, that advised the development of the NAP and the National Sustainable Development Plan. We were in a process of elaborating that when the NAP came on stream. And so these documents are well aligned. It's good to know that in our NAP, we actually already elaborated a number of activities that could happen under the program areas. And we try to do an investment. We try to prioritize investments based on that. And there's actually some indicative costs, for example, included in our NAP, so that someone or an entity who's interested in supporting Grenada with the implementation of our NAP can actually get some basic information already from the document without having to do too much. And we've already started working on a number of concept notes and developing a project pipeline based on various thematic areas. We have quite a few that we've already received funding for, and areas that we're attempting to do further work. So just to give a flavor of some of the efforts that have already come out under the NAP. So for example, in the water sector, we had a GCF approved project for the water sector that's dealing with governance, water supply and water access. We have a regional project that we're participating in that is more infrastructure based in terms of strengthening community resilience and national resilience, mainly for buildings and other infrastructure, roads and other infrastructure areas. Under agriculture, through the GEF, for example, or GEF 6 funds, focus on sustainable landscapes and the relationship between agriculture and climate change. And then we have a number of other capital as well as grant funded projects that are addressing climate smart agriculture. And it's important to note, for example, with COVID, that we have started developing, or we've developed a response recovery plan for agriculture to boost food security that is also climate responsive and based on areas identified in the NAP. In terms of governance and institutional arrangements, I mean, we still have work to do, but one of the things that we're very proud of in Grenada, for example, is that we've established a network that spans all the sectors and entities that are involved in adaptation as well as mitigation to ensure that there's cross-fertilization and that it's robust and synergistic. So we have a focal point network that in every ministry and sector elaborated in the NAP, we have persons who are responsible for ensuring that their sector, their ministry is implementing activities based on the NAP, and that we have a mechanism by which we can report back. We have an overarching strategic leadership body that helps us with the coordination of our climate change efforts, especially including adaptation, implementation. And then we have a process where a platform that we can utilize to ensure that we are consistently providing feedback to the population on what is happening. So just to wrap up, as it relates to M&E, so we are collaborating with the NAP Global Network and support from other partners to elaborate an M&E framework for the NAP. We already conceptualized it and we've analyzed the system. Our next steps include trying to operationalize it, and we're going to pilot it with the M&E system from the GCF water project. And we are actually already in the process of trying to assess the activities that were undertaken in the NAP, given that it's to 2021, so that we could prepare for a review and an updating of our NAP next year. So thank you very much, and I hope I stuck to my time very well. And we look forward to any questions moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hobson. Right on time. You used your 7 minutes to the full extent, and I'm very proud of you. In addition to the real good work that you're doing there in Grenada, you're setting, you may be small in size, but you're large in the example that you're setting for all of us that we can learn from and use as we prepare our own NAPs here in Jamaica and elsewhere. So let me thank you, and to thank all 5 presenters for wonderful presentations this morning. So a very big thank you to the focal points for the informative presentation. It is quite interesting to see how the countries have packaged their policies, projects, and programs to take them through the next few years. Indeed, it has become clear to us that finance is of critical importance to advance the implementation of the priority activities. And we heard from our SBI chair this morning that efforts have been made and progress within financing. A number of countries are coming forward to support developing countries. We have countries will continue to require the support to be able to successfully implement this priority action. And that fits in vein with what I've been saying. I'm sure that you all join me in thanking all the speakers. And if I may be so presumptuous, but it's wonderful to see 5 ladies leading the charge with respect to this process. And we're very glad for that. We're very happy for that. When the women take up the charge, then you know everyone will follow. So I'm very happy for that. Let me move now to the next session. Time is moving. And I said that we will have a question and answer session. This is that question and answer session. So if you have any questions or comments, I think you can raise your hand. I think that is the process. And the Secretariat will identify you, or they will tell me to identify you.
Clifford, maybe while people are still thinking, we have 2 questions that were posed to Nora. I think one of them was, how do the local plans connect to the global, to the goals of the sectoral plans, and connect perhaps, I think, also to the national plan, because you mentioned that you developed 16 local plans. So the question was how they connect to that. It's on the chart. And also there was another one on whether the health sector strategy is underway. Perhaps Nora can address that while people ask other questions.
Sí, muchas gracias por sus preguntas. Vamos a empezar por la más fácil. Con relación a al plan sectorial de salud, efectivamente era nuestra prioridad también poder abordar este sector tan importante para nosotros, y mandamos nosotros desde el Ministerio del Ambiente un pedido formal teníamos incluso ya el financiamiento, que era justamente lo que íbamos a destinar para estos 2 sectores que yo les mencionaba. Sin embargo, en atención a la pandemia, entiendo yo que no hubo una respuesta positiva, entonces como que eso ya no depende otra vez del ministerio, ese desarrollo de los planes sectoriales. Entonces, a la fecha es nuestro interés, sin embargo, no estamos teniendo una respuesta positiva. Bueno, con relación a la primera pregunta, en la práctica nos surgió al revés. En el momento del desarrollo de los planes locales, como que las actividades se vinculaban con los sectores. Como que la problemática se abocaba al sector de recursos hídricos o a la problemática de pérdidas económicas en la agricultura. Entonces, como que efectivamente sí están conectados, pero en la práctica nos surgió al revés. ¿Y cómo se conectan entre todos los sectores? A la fecha, ¿verdad? El Ministerio del Ambiente está estableciendo un sistema de información ambiental, el CIAN que les conocemos nosotros. Y este sistema, que no es el sistema todavía de monitoreo y evaluación, pero va a ser, o sea, ya es como un inicio, es ahí donde nosotros vamos a tener ese registro y poder hacer nosotros esa vinculación. Porque justamente ahora, al momento de la actualización de las NDC, como que no sabemos, o sea, tipo, no sabes de dónde vas a unir uno con otro. Eso básicamente con relación a esas dos preguntas. Y aquí a la tercera ya le pasé el link a la compañera y voy a complementar con el del sector de agricultura. Gracias. Espero que haya sido suficiente la respuesta.
Okay, thank you. I'm back again, Matsami.
Yeah, Clifford, I see also that we had a hand from Ulrich Trott. Perhaps you can give them the floor to ask a question.
Okay, Dr. Trotz, if you're hearing me, you have the floor, sir.
Morning, good morning, Chair. Good to hear you, and thanks to the presenters. Excellent presentations, very informative. Our colleague from Grenada raised an issue that I want some clarification on. This is what's the status of NAPs vis-a-vis NDCs? We are very much preoccupied now with upgrading NDCs, and when we started that process, we were looking at INDCs where the focus was on mitigation, but now we are encouraged to include adaptation in the NDCs, and there's a lot of focus on that. The question is it obligatory for countries to have both NAPs and NDCs? How the two of them stand basically in terms of how we approach adaptation, particularly from the funding point of view. And Chair, you made a comment after the Uruguay presentation to the effect that they had a NAP on energy. And it brought to mind the fact that in our regional adaptation strategy, one of the goals basically is dealing with the energy sector and moving to renewable energy and addressing energy conservation. And the reason for that isn't really because we are looking at the minuscule amount of greenhouse gases we put in the atmosphere and removing that, but because of the unaffordability of the present architecture of our energy sector that depends on fossil fuel. And we feel that by addressing that issue, a lot of funds will be saved by countries and accrue to countries, and they can use that for at least initiating adaptation. And so we have coined the phrase that mitigation is part of our adaptation strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trotz, formerly of the 5Cs, the Climate Change Center that we have here in the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. I think he's now enjoying his years of retirement, well-deserved, Dr. Trotz. And you make very useful points. I think you've answered the question with respect to the NAPs and the NDCs, because ultimately, your mitigation becomes an adaptation effort as we try to move to 100% renewable energy sources. For those who need to do, well, we have to do that as we try to meet our 2050 target. Ms. Obsley, if you want to come in to say something with respect to responding to Dr. Trotz, then you'll have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Clifford. And thank you for your question, Dr. Trotz. I think I should just probably state that in Grenada, we took a policy level decision that our NAP and our NDC would be given the same priority efforts in the country. We know that other countries have taken the decision, for instance, to elaborate adaptation efforts within their NDC. What you would find in Grenada's NDC, which we are currently in the process of updating, I should probably state, with the intention of submitting before the year is up, in keeping with our obligations under the Paris Agreement. We have actually decided that our adaptation efforts would be elaborated in the NAP, and we have our mitigation efforts elaborated in the NDC, but the documents are actually synergistic and they refer to each other. So the NAP would refer to the NDC and the NDC would refer to the NAP. And we do have like a short reference in the NDC itself, elaborating some of the priority areas in the NAP. But if you're really looking for concrete activities related to adaptation for Grenada, you would have to refer to the NAP. And that is what we encourage our partners to do, entities who are interested in working with Grenada on that, to address our adaptation efforts. But we recognize that adaptation requires significant investment separate and apart from mitigation efforts. And the NDC does sort of focus for us on mitigation, and we have a lot of work happening there. You asked about whether or not it was obligatory. As far as I am aware, it is not obligatory to address adaptation within the NDC. I am subject to correction on that, but it is not obligatory to address it in the NDC, but we refer to it in the NDC as well because we want to ensure that adaptation is given sufficient and equal emphasis in Grenada. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Obsley. You have answered the question perfectly. The adaptation component of an NDC is still a voluntary effort. And the NAPs, as you know, is mainly for the developing countries, started out with the least developed countries. And we saw it to be so important that we had to have it in all developing countries, sorry. So that's where we have. Secretariat, are there any more questions for me? Can I move on to the panel discussion or not?
I was almost suggesting that we move to the next part where you were going to pose specific questions to the countries. Of course, there are more questions in the chat that I would also encourage the others to respond to the questions in the chat box, but that we can also address them maybe after your panel from the colleagues from UNEP, FAO, and the countries that are presenting. One of the questions that was asked to countries is there seems to be no much of social sectors or social issues in the NAPs, issues like education, awareness, food security and nutrition. But maybe you can think about that and probably put them in the chat, but I'll propose that we move to the next session. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Well, the quick answer to that, there are other means of communicating things like public awareness. There's also, you still have your national communication, mind you, that you can also use. All right, so we're going to move now to the panel discussion. Where time is restricting us somewhat, so we're moving a little bit fast. We're going to have a 5-member panel for discussions. So we will have 2 representatives from the countries who have been identified already. We'll have a member from the least developed countries expert group, and then we'll have 2 representatives from international organizations that support the work that we're doing with respect to national adaptation plans. So here are the questions. The first set of questions will go to the country rep, and it says, how are you
Clifford? I suspect that we lost the moderator temporarily, but that is not a big problem. While he's connecting, what he was going to ask to two of the countries that he already wanted to ask, and this would be to Uruguay and Suriname, is what actions or steps are you already taking now to implement or start to think of implementing the measures you have in your NAP? Maybe we can have quick reflections from Suriname and Uruguay, 1 minute each, while the moderator is still coming. Thank you.
Hola. ¿Comienzo yo, les parece? Tal vez algunos comentarios vinculados a acciones y vinculados a las preguntas que habían realizado allí en el chat. Por un lado, vinculado digamos, a la relación con nuestra NDC, yo comentaba, Uruguay tiene metas en la NDC vinculadas a la adaptación, y bueno, y en cada uno de los NAPs que se están formulando y que ya se han formulado, hay medidas que contribuyen al cumplimiento de esas metas. O sea que hay una relación directa con las metas que tiene el país al cumplimiento de la NDC. Por otro lado, la otra pregunta que me parece bien interesante es respecto al tema de la energía. Uruguay también tiene previsto realizar, ya está comenzando de alguna manera las sesiones preparatorias para hacer un NAP en energía y un NAP de salud, en esta estrategia, como yo les decía anteriormente, que es sectorial, digamos, de planes nacionales, pero igual, digamos, yo quería comentar que sin duda los co-beneficios entre adaptación y mitigación están como muy presentes. Por ejemplo, en el caso del NAP Ciudades, estamos trabajando muy fuertemente en planes de movilidad, que incluyan la movilidad sostenible, que incluyen los vehículos eléctricos, que incluyen la movilidad activa, bicisendas, peatonales, etc. Y además también muy fuertemente con medidas vinculadas a eficiencia energética en el sector edilicio, que en eso se está trabajando también con el Ministerio de Vivienda, y bueno, y con las intendencias, con un set de medidas propuestas en ese sentido. Así que bueno, creo justamente en esta cuestión de que el del vínculo entre mitigación y adaptación es muy estrecho. Lo mismo puedo mencionar, por ejemplo, otras medidas vinculadas a la promoción del verde en las ciudades, ¿no? Y el plantado de árboles, y bueno, y todo lo que tiene que ver con las especies vegetales. Así que bueno, nada, eso, me parecía que era importante como mencionarlo, y además tiene que ver un poco con el bajado de las medidas, hablar más como de medidas concretas, ¿no? Que es un poco lo que nos pedían. Gracias.
Okay, thank you very much, Marina. I was almost going to ask you if you have to say in one few words. You mentioned the coastal project that you are developing that is going to be implemented. To those who be interested, for someone who has not started, what would they do? But perhaps while you're thinking about that, I would like to ask Yvette to come in and maybe give her perspectives as well on the same question, briefly.
Thank you much, Sami. I'm back.
I will focus a little bit more on the relationship between our NAP and our enhanced NDC. At the time that we were preparing our enhanced NDC, we were at the final stage of our NAP formulation. And one of the issues that was identified, not only in the NAP process, but also in other processes, is that we should include the agriculture sector. And our enhanced NDC has two additional sectors. The agriculture sector is one of the sectors that is included in our enhanced NDC, but also a little bit of infrastructure and urban infrastructure. Yeah. So if you look at both documents, you can see that there is a relation and that they build on each other. So what makes it more easy for us to implement both documents? But of course, we need to look into the issue in which what will be our first priority. So we're still in that stage. But the discussions have already started, so we are waiting on that. But for implementation of our enhanced NDC, we are also now in the process to formulate an investment plan, which will enable us to prioritize the sectors, but also the activities that we need to undertake. So that is in relation to the NAP and the NDC. And for the ones that did not know, we also have a NAMA for the energy sector that has also been finalized, but is in the process of being registered to the NAMA registry. And the NAMA is related to renewable energy in the interior of Suriname.
Thank you very much, Yvette. And before I hand over back to you, Clifford, I just wanted to thank the two comments. I think, as I was mentioning, Marina, she had mentioned earlier that they are developing a coastal project that is going to be prepared, package to be submitted to the GCF. Yvette also mentioned two important aspects of the links to their GCF country program, and as well as extending some of the projects that are mitigation related into their NAMA. So what is obvious, of course, is that countries would need to take forward whatever they identified in their maps, and either through the GCF country program or other ways in making sure that they are being implemented. So for that, we had UNEP colleagues and also colleagues from the FAO, who are also the delivery partners to the GCF, and of course, GF agencies in other ways, because under the financial mechanism, usually countries need to go through one of these or their national entities. So they were also to respond, perhaps maybe they can provide reflections and give back to you on how do they see themselves or what are the opportunities for supporting these countries that have achieved these important milestones of having their NAPs in place. What are some of the opportunities that the countries can seize to seek your assistance or to be able to implement what they have? Thank you. And I'll not talk anymore. Give back to you, moderator.
Okay, thank you. I think you have done an excellent summary, and apologize again for my internet. It doesn't usually do this, but I'm not sure what's happening. All right, so we just go now into, I don't have to summarize, you have summarized it well. So I'm going to now invite the Vice Chair of the leg, Mr. Kenel De Luska, who will present the closing remarks.
I think you wanted to hear from FAO and UNEP first, maybe?
Oh, they are, oh, sorry, I misinterpreted. Yes. Who is first, FAO or UNEP? I thought, yeah. FAO, you have the floor.
All right, I can go first. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. My name is Tanya Liu. I'm the Climate Change Policy Officer for the FAO Regional Office based in Santiago, Chile. I think from our perspective as a food and agricultural organization, we are pleased to see that many of the countries have included agriculture as one of the priority sectors in their NAPs. I think it's also good to know that for the agriculture and the land use sector, they are also a great source of emissions, which is for the region, it's around 50% of total emissions. So it's not only adaptation, but it's also mitigation. But I think the two come together. I think there was already a discussion on that, on NDCs and how NAPs and NAMAs come together. How we support the countries is that so far we have 11 projects for GCF, supporting, for example, Paraguay, we're supporting with a big project, Chile. I think that would be one of the projects. And I think what I would like to highlight with the GCF projects is, I think it's an excellent opportunity for partnerships. I think with one of the projects, we are collaborating with the CAF, what we call the Mesoamerican or the Latin American Development Bank, because these projects are big and they require a multitude of disciplinaries. So for example, in Ecuador, we're doing a project with WWF, also again with the Development Bank in the Galapagos. So I think I really would like to, encourage the countries to think about partnerships when developing GCF projects. It shouldn't be only one organization. You can bring together different organizations. You can have implementing agencies, and you have one accredited entity such as the FAO. So I think that is, I think, one of the key messages that I would like to broadcast here. The other one is that from the FAO, of course, when we look at the SIDS, our Caribbean region, the disaster resilience comes very high on the agenda when we talk about NAPs and climate change projects, because I saw one of the comments from my colleague Sylvie. So especially for the Caribbean region, I would say this is high on the agenda for our projects, and less for the Latin American countries, where, for example, we do a lot of projects on livestock and water resources, because we do have a dry corridor both in Mesoamerica and in the South. So that would be it. Over. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And thank you very much for the information that you're providing us. UNEP, I think, is the next organization who wants to come in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Malum. Thank you, Mr. Malum. Do you hear me well?
Yes, sir. I'm hearing you. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, this is Gustavo Mañez. I am Climate Change Coordinator for the UN Environment Program. And from our perspective, we are actually very pleased to be working with at least 6 countries in the region developing their national adaptation plans. Very varied projects, a lot of priorities, very different one from another. But in a nutshell, the capacities that we bring to the table here to support countries, first of all, as an accredited entity with the Green Climate Fund, using their national adaptation planning resources allocated up to 3 million per country. Well, we support the development of the projects themselves, but when it comes to the execution, I think that in some countries, we provide a neutral platform where stakeholders can sit down to identify the issues, the priorities, and even bring stakeholders that may not have such a good relationship with government, or because government may differ from the national level to local levels, provinces, etc. So that is very helpful in certain countries. Definitely bringing the private sector on board through the experience that we have gained in other type of projects. And additionally to access to finance, the other main component is capacity building. Basically, we have our focus is basically to build the capacities in countries that once the National Adaptation Plan is completed, there are enough resources to identify, to prioritize, to develop, and to finance and implement adaptation actions, so that the adaptation continues to happen in the country after the project is over. And I would like to say that for that we have a number of training platforms that include, for instance, a community of practice on national adaptation planning, where the countries participate through webinars, but also receive expert support to solve concrete issues and problems that they face when developing their NAPs. We organize regularly with other partners, including the UNFCCC, the NAP Days in Latin America and the Caribbean. We organize regular workshops through the NAP Global Support Program. And here, for instance, we have just launched a couple of weeks ago a 2-day exchange with 10 countries of the region, countries that were developing NAPs with UNDP and with UNEP. And also trainings on specific topics like how you can bring nature-based solutions in the context of adaptation in cities, for instance. And this is a regular training that is happening now with the support of the Euroclimate Plus initiative. So that's an example, a little bit of the capacity building that we bring to the table. And just to close up again with finance, as I started, finance is critical to make all this possible. So once the NAP is completed, we are very thorough in making sure that a pipeline of projects, bankable projects, is developed as part of their NAPs, so that the funding necessary to implement priority actions comes and those actions are scaled up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Very important information you're giving us now to support the implementation of national adaptation plans. And we really are grateful and happy to get this type of information, and really feeling good to see all these organizations, international organization, FAO in this case, and UNEP, the work that you're doing. Partnership, I think, is the key. You need to seek that support, and if you look, you'll find that. I think that is what I'm hearing. Did the leg? I'm not sure if the leg rep had made a contribution as yet. If not, then that person has the floor. Tommy, you can guide me here.
Yes, Kennel is ready.
Kennel is not waiting.
That's very quick wrap-up remarks.
Okay. The floor is yours, Kennel. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Clifford. Thank you. So just like our previous speaker, it was a privilege to be part of this webinar. On behalf of my colleagues and myself, I want to express my deepest appreciation to all those who made time to participate in today's program. As highlighted by the SBI chair, the NAP is the main national policy instrument for coordinating and driving action of all actors and stakeholders in pursuit of adaptation goals and outcomes. As part of the vision of the LDC to have all countries submit their NAP by 2020 or soon thereafter, the LEG will continue to provide essential support to countries through different modalities. These include NAP writing workshop, NAP country dialogue, and Open NAP initiative. We do that by working together with the Adaptation Committee. Indeed, hello?
Continue, Kennel, we're hearing you.
So indeed, formulation of the NAP will be meaningless unless substantial progress is made in the implementation of all priority activities identified in the NAP and those like to emerge later on. In this regard, I call on the GCF and other organizations providing financial support to facilitate access to sufficient finance for the implementation of the NAP. Similarly, organizations supporting countries yet to formulate the NAP should expedite action to facilitate the formulation of the NAP. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much from Kennel, from the LDC expert group, and really thank you for the important work that you have been doing, the contribution that you have been making in supporting countries as they go to this NAP process. We really are grateful to the LEG. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's event. Presentations and a recording of the event will be made available on the event page. And I want to say a big thank you, big thank you to everyone who made this event possible. Please stay safe and see you all next time. Bye. Bye from Jamaica.
Bye now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you. Bye.
Hey, I see you old friends.
Yeah, let's see friends for a little bit. Clifford, how are you?
Hey, what's happening? I am missing you guys.
So this is a new way of doing it, huh?
Bye.
This is the way we're doing it now. Hey, how are you?
Excellent. All right, guys. Stay safe.
All right, take care.
Be safe.
Okay.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Hi, Giza. Good to see you.
Thank you. Same here.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good.
I haven't seen you in ages, man.
Yeah.
Hi, Cliff. Cheers, man. Excellent session.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good weekend, everyone. Thanks.
All right, guys. If anything, you drop me an email, okay?
Thanks very much,
Clifford.
Clifford.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity. It was a joy.